Hi, my name is Jeffro, and this is Digital Dominance, the podcast for service-based small business owners who are ready to seize the recognition and growth that their company deserves. You've worked hard to build a business you're proud of. Now it's time for Digital Domination. Welcome back to Digital Dominance. Today, I'm joined by Nick Musica, an SEO expert and WordPress web designer with nearly 2 decades of hands-on experience. Nick has helped countless small businesses optimize their online presence, and he's here to break down the 3 essential pillars of SEO that can make or break your website rankings. Nick, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jeffro. Happy to be here. Good morning.
Thanks. Yeah, and I just realized, I said musica because it harkened back to when I learned Spanish. I don't know if it's musica or not, but you tell me.
Yeah, it's musica, but you pronounce it any way you want. All good.
All right. Well, thank you for the grace there. But I'm excited to get into some of the brass tacks of SEO with you today. Now, I mentioned in the intro that we're going to talk about the 3 essential pillars of SEO, but I've heard different definitions for those 3 pillars. Some people say the 3 pillars are technical, on-page, and off-page. Others say that the 3 pillars are authority, relevance, and experience. So what is your definition of the 3 pillars?
Yeah, I go with technical, on-page, and off-page.
Okay. That makes sense to me. Those are the main aspects.
Yeah, I mean, because you can properly categorize elements that roll up to each one of those. The other ones we could talk about, we can categorize, but we're going to debate about them probably for the next 25 minutes.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let's walk through your process when you're doing SEO for a website. What do you do first, especially as we're talking about these pillars? How do you approach each of those?
Yeah. So we do a lot of foundational work with folks. Folks come to us not having done SEO typically. Some folks come to us having done SEO maybe not in an ideal way. And some folks are looking to grow, right? And for any one of those scenarios, we're taking a look at the technical first, which is the first pillar, right? We're taking a look to see, can this site be crawled and indexed? Which means, can little Googlebot, when a little soldier of Google, can it come out to your website? Can it go through each and every link? Can it understand what's on the pages? Can it understand your files, be it PDFs, videos, images, whatever it is? And then can it bring it back to its database in the sky and make sense of it? And if it can't do that, then it doesn't matter if you have 100 great pages of content on your website or the best videos in the whole wide world. No one's going to find it, right? So let's make sure the technical is up to snuff. And again, it's, can Google access it and can it bring it back and understand it? So we're looking at whatever the scenario is when we first get started with someone. We always take a look at that. And here's how the conversation typically sounds. You're good. Now let's talk about your content and your links. And that's typically not how it rolls out. It's typically, let's talk about your technical, because there are some things that need to be buttoned up. And then when we do that, then we talk about the content and the links, because for every $1 we spend on content, we want to get $1 back in return. If our technical is less than ideal, we're going to get 60 cents is the arbitrary number that I use versus the $1. But we want full value. Okay,
so technical SEO is the first thing you do. That makes sense, because obviously you got to be able to get indexed by Google before anything else matters.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And some folks, I see it on LinkedIn. I see it in the SEO community of folks just going, technical is overrated. And I think you just don't know how to do technical, right? You just don't. I mean, even if it's a 1-page website, and this is a little extreme, this perspective, but if you have the wrong controls in place, even your 1-page website has 0 chance of ranking. If you screwed up your robots.txt, which is a control that tells Google, stay here, come to this website or don't come to this website. If you screwed up your canonical tag for some reason, that can also tell Google to go away, right? There's very simple controls that need to be checked before we say, let's talk about something different. Right. I have a client who I've been working with for years who came to me and she said, my old SEO guy kept on telling me to produce more blog posts. Okay, well, let me take a look. There's nothing wrong with your blog posts. I mean, maybe we need more. Let's have that conversation. But your technical is banged up. And so without having much in the way of new blog posts. And I have the monthly report pulled up over here, year over year. We're looking at, we went in October of 23, there were 85,000 visits to the site. In October, it's pretty good, not so bad. And then in October of 24, 434,000.
That's
So
huge.
So even better, right? And I would say like 90% is technical. So especially the bigger the website, the more technical of an eye you want to look at it. That's where the scaling really comes from. Assuming your content is good, assuming your links are good, you're going to get a big bang for your buck from the technical.
What are some of the issues you see on the technical from someone who tried it before that didn't really know what they were doing?
Yeah, so I would say one is there's an assumption that it's actually even being done, right? Like, don't worry about my technical. I have a technical department that's actually doing it. You don't. You have a technical department that's full of doing other things. Like if they're not being paid explicitly to keep your site healthy from an SEO perspective, they are not doing it. They're working on your email. They're working on your hosting, which is not the same thing as SEO. They're working to make sure that all these things are working over here, right? That's what they're getting paid for. That's what they're getting their bonuses on. They're not getting paid for SEO. So one, you need folks who are actually tasked with it, because SEO is, here's the broad definition of SEO. Anyone who's touching the website is SEOing, right? So everyone needs to know what their role is, right? Including the technical folks. And so assuming we're actually doing the technical, a lot of folks don't understand how all the elements come together. So we want to start ideally with a very simple structure. There's the home page, there's category pages, we have a guest here. We have all subcategory and destination pages, everything underneath. And Google should be able to go to the home page, then go down to the category pages and just keep on crawling. And that's your primary information architecture. It's your primary technical architecture. And then we have controls in the background. Robots.txt, we have canonical tags. They all should be speaking the same language. When we start to mix up the language and give Google a conflicting direction, we just put the decision-making in Google's hands. And when we do that, we lose. Because someone else is going to do it better than us. They're going to tell Google exactly what to do. And at some point, we're going to go, how come we're not number one anymore? And how do we get to number 6? Now we're on page 2, right? So you just need to make sure that all the elements in your technical are speaking the language that Google needs in a consistent manner. And that's going to be the chances of your best result.
Right. Because it's not like, I made a sitemap. Now I'm done with technical. Let's move on to blog posts. Like, okay, that's part of it, but there's obviously a lot more to it than that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So what about as we move into the on page and we start looking at things like, I guess you can tell me which bucket you put these in, but like the title tag and the H1 tag, is that considered part of the on page optimization for you?
For me, it is. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And are those still the most important places for keywords, in your opinion, when you're telling Google what the site's about?
Yes, because so Google's looking at the title tag is looking at which is hidden. Right, but that's what shows in the SERPs. That's what gets someone to in the search engine results page. So when someone does a query for XYZ and your page shows up, your title tag is showing, your meta description is showing, or they get rewritten by Google for different reasons. But they are very, very important to give Google a sense of what this page is about. And then your first bit of copy on your page is the first bit of unique copy on the page is going to be very important. Sometimes that's actually a breadcrumb, right? We have home, blog, and then article title sometimes. So we have a sense that Google has a first indication of what this page is about. But then we have the H1, which is the page title, the visible page title, which sometimes is one-to-one with the title tag. Sometimes it's variation. But yeah, very important.
Yeah, whenever I do an audit, I see so many times the title tag just says home, nickmusica.com, right? And that's the first thing I say. I'm like, guys, you're missing a huge keyword opportunity here. And that's such an easy fix.
Yeah. A guy just reached out to me, I think it was yesterday. And I just did a quick crawl of the site. We used Screaming Frog. And I just wanted to see, what's going on here? Because the traffic's going up. I'm using a third-party tool to track the trend, right? So the absolute numbers in third-party tools, please don't believe them. They are 100% absolutely wrong. But from a trending perspective, is it going up or is it going down? Right. So I'm looking at the up and I'm like, this is cool. Like, what can I give this guy? What can I offer this guy? And then I do a crawl of the website. There are no title tags on this website. They're absent, which means I would assume they were there. I need to assume because we have some amount of good going on here. So they went missing, right? Is my assumption. We'll figure out what's actually true. But if they went missing and no one has caught it yet, that means no one is looking at the technical. In this case, it's a technical catch, right? It's an on-page implementation, but it's not going to be found by a writer, chances are, because they're looking at what you can see in the browser. It's going to be a technical catch because it's going to be found via a crawl, a technical tool.
Right. And that makes sense. And there's all sorts of little things like that if you don't know to look for it, you're just never going to know, right? And so that's why you need the team to pay attention to it for you.
Yeah, that's right.
Let's talk a little bit more about the on-page, in terms of creating content and doing internal linking and headings for H2, H3 with keywords and all of that. What's your approach there? Yeah,
I would go with all those things are important. And I heard the best definition of from an SEO about what SEO is, how to get the biggest bang for the buck years ago at a conference. And, it's sort of like day 2 or 3, the conference is ending. And he said, based on everything I heard here today, I'm pretty sure that if you just do the basics really, really well, that's going to get you further than most of the other garbage that's out there. And that stuck with me. That was probably 10 years ago. And so my come from is doing the basics really, really well. And I also understand from talking to other folks that my basics, they're not the same as your basics, right? The way I think about duplicate content, and that's a basic for me, is not how someone else thinks of duplicate content. They may not even know what it means. So you have to be thinking about the right basics in order to get that result. And what you're talking about, that structure of H1, H2, H3, I want that structured well. Sometimes you get into cases where, well, if we were to change the H1, here's what it means for everything else. Okay, well, let's defer that. We don't want to recreate the website wheel. Let's do what we can right now. Let's see how far we can get, but let's not knock it off the list. Like we want to hedge our bets. We want to do everything to the best of our ability.
Yeah, and that makes sense. What about in today's world? We've all got ChatGPT and different AI content writing tools. Is there a good way to kind of marry these together where you actually maintain decent SEO structure with these AI tools?
There was back in the day before there was like Surfer, SEO, and ClearScope, which basically are tools that go out to Google. They'll grab the top 10 listings, they'll distill it down into a template, essentially. And then you can write to the template, right? Before those tools came into play, I was doing that manually. And then those tools came into play. And then everyone started to use those tools, which made a lot of content sound pretty much the same, right? And then we got AI. And what AI did was go out, crawled the pages that were created with those tools, and then give you a variation on the variation, right? And make it sound super vanilla, right? Like let's take out any personalization that I could actually give to it as a subject matter expert. And like let's just round off the corners, right? It's like the best blended wine, right? They all sort of taste the same, right? Because it's a blend, right? But if you were to buy a wine from a very specific neighborhood in Napa, whether you like it or not, I don't care. It doesn't matter. But it has its own flavor, right? Versus all the blends, they're sort of all the same. And that's what we pretty much have with the evolution of the content tools and with AI. To the degree that Google has issued a very, very harsh correction over the past couple of years called the Helpful Content Update. And I don't know if you saw this. This was amazing, and amazing in a bad way. On October 30th, there was an article published on Search Engine Journal, and it was about a meeting up in Mountain View. Google invited publishers, small publishers. These were the folks who bought the things. They bought the stand-up paddle boards. They used the stand-up paddle boards. They took pictures of the stand-up paddle boards. They had videos of it. They wrote the content about it, right? They did what Google said to do. However, they ranked really well. And then ChatGPT and everyone else and Surfer and ClearScope and all those tools found all those sites, took those templates, which looks like this, 10 things you need to know about buying the best paddleboard, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then FAQs at the bottom. That template has been done to death. And so what happened was Google made a very harsh correction, and a lot of good sites got caught up in the algorithm because it simply looked like that template or it looked like watered down content. So affiliate models, like they're done right now. Small publishers, they're done. If you have a good product, if you're a service, If you're local, these are the folks who can benefit from SEO today. But affiliates, small publishers, no. Even big publishers like Forbes, they're getting kicked in the pants right about now because they have sold off portions of their website for best product. Click here. Best product 2024. Best CBD gummies. They've been ranking for years for that query. Do you think that page is bought and paid for? 100%. I know firsthand it is. I know who bought it. So that methodology has been produced tons of times. And so how can we, as folks with legitimate businesses, for lack of a better word, products, services, we can use those tools, but here's the thing. And by use ChatGPT, here's what I mean. And similar tools, Claude, whatever it is. Never use it to produce your content. Don't do it. It's not a productivity tool. It's not a production tool. You don't do that. If you have nothing to say, don't say anything. If you have something to say, then you should say it. Those tools can actually help you sort of like respond, give you something to react to. So they can be super helpful for productivity, but they are not the end all be all production tool. Absolutely not. If you're doing that, you're setting yourself up for success. And here's the thing. No one has ever come to me for a content contract and said, Nick, give me the cheapest content you possibly can deliver. They've never done that. But I could tell you this, starting in November 2022, I lost a lot of content SOWs, contracts, because people implicitly or explicitly said, I want the cheapest content I can produce. And so they did that.
Right.
And now we are where we are.
Yep. So, I mean, it's kind of, on the one hand, it's frustrating, right? Because it feels like, oh man, now I got to spend time writing good stuff. Like, but wasn't that the point all along, right? I think that's what we should have been doing. And the sites that have been doing that are the ones that have kind of stayed high in the rankings because they're actually helping people. And that's what Google's been paying better attention to, right?
Totally. I mean, it would be like if you or I were at a dinner party, right? Like fast forward to this weekend. And I start going, I want to tell you all the things that Jeffro said when we were chatting this past week. They're going to go, maybe I should have invited Jeffro, right?
Yeah.
Right. And so like, if you have a voice, you should really use it. You should use it. We need more unique perspectives out there. We need more good products. We need more good. There's so much average out there. We don't need more of it.
Yeah, agreed. And I like how you described how to use AI too. It's not just something to spit out, copy, paste, put it on the site. Like, it's great for brainstorming because if you sometimes staring at a blank page and you're like, I don't really know what to start talking about, like you can ask it to give you ideas like, hey, what are some of the frustrations that my target audience XYZ has?
Totally.
Okay. Oh yeah, I can write about that because that does come up with my clients when I was meeting. Okay, now you got something to work with. But yeah, don't just rely on it to regurgitate what's already out there because it's not going to work. You might be like, I wrote a blog post today, but did you really? Yeah. All right. So let's move on to off-page stuff now. I mean, there's so many different ways to approach the different kinds of link building. I mean, there's press releases. Is that still an effective way to get backlinks? Is it best to do guest posting? I'm sure you can talk to your approach there.
Yeah. So let's break down a couple of those things. So press releases. So back in the day, folks would drop a press release on PR Newswire. There's a ton of services. And they thought that was a good, in and of itself, what I just described. They thought that was a good SEO tactic. And then 10 years later, or whatever it was, Matt Cutts comes out, who used to be the face of Google for SEOs. He comes out and says those links never counted for SEO. They never did. So you could have dropped press releases every day of the week on the wires, but the real benefit was pre-Google. That benefit of pre-Google was still the benefit, which means you drop it in the wire, not because of the link from the wire. You drop it in the wire for anyone else who's picking it up. And so, right. And then they pick it up and then ABC or whoever picks it up. They say something about it. They have a link to you. And so that's really the benefit of PR. And so don't use it to just, oh my God, just spray and pray. Like don't do that. If you're doing that, you don't have much to say, right? You're just trying to game the system. But if you have a good product, people know the difference between good. People are starved for good. Do you remember the Olympics? The guy from Turkey who was shooting. He shows up there with his regular glasses on, pair of jeans, right? I think he came in second. Right? He didn't even get the gold, right? And he was the talk of the town. People saw the real thing, and they're like, "We want that." Versus all the other garbage that's out there, right? So that's the benefit of PR. When we talk about blogs, if you have something good, again, if you have a good product, you have something to say, People are starved for it. Just give it to them. Make sure you're giving it to the high quality blogs. Here's the thing people get confused about, because Google comes in and goes, well, trying to manipulate search results with links is bad. It is. And also bad with copy and editing. So if you get bad, the worst thing you can do is have bad copy and bad links. I mean, you can bully the algorithm for some period of time. It's going to crash at some point, right? So if you have good links, if you have good copy and you have good links, it may be a slow build, but that's the best type of build to have. You're building a brand. You're supporting your company with a marketing tactic, in this case called SEO. So if you're gonna do it, take the time, do it right, do it slow. A little bit is better than nothing. And then when it's time for growth mode, kick it up a notch, get going.
So when you're doing your link building for clients, are you simply registering as a contributor on these sites that let you post your own content, or are you actually reaching out to blogs and say, hey, you know what, I think this service would really fit here. Maybe you can add this link.
It's the latter. Yes, it's more of the latter. Yeah, we have content in an audience that we think are a good fit for you and yours. Here's what we're thinking. What do you think? Let's have that conversation. Sounds like a match. Versus, I take everyone, give me $500, right? A spammy website. It's like, oh, so easy to get on there. Like it should be hard. Link building is hard. And if it's easy, that's the wrong signal. You don't want that.
Right, because you're going to have another situation eventually where Google's like, hey, let's change the algorithm because we've got all these people spamming these links that don't mean anything, and they'll just chop it off.
Right.
Right? That branch will go away, and you'll be back where you started.
Great way to phrase it, yeah.
So what about when you're putting together these content pages and such? There's often a balance between catering to the algorithm, right? Structuring things a certain way, sneaking in your keywords, but you also don't want to ruin the user experience so that the visitors stay engaged and they don't read this and feel like, these guys like talking to a robot, So how do you approach that?
Yeah, so there's always three audiences for your content. There's Google who's going to crawl and index it and ideally rank it. There's the users who are going to read it. And then there's the business who's going to make money from it. So we're always balancing those items. The guidance I give to writers as we start working together is, if it sounds like a third grader wrote it, where it's a bad page. I mean, you should read it and not even notice the keywords in many cases. The best example I have of this is when I was working at eSurance. And we had a bunch of talented folks over there, and I called John, who was a fantastic writer. I called John over and I said, John, can we talk about your page? And I don't think John really wanted to talk about the page. Like, John knew he was a good writer, right? And he's like, what? Like, who's this SEO guy? Like, what is he going to give me? And I started walking through the page and I said, John, I think the biggest thing, your copy's awesome. You want to read it. It reads well. It's storied well. It's structured well but you have lists where you need lists. You have paragraphs. You need paragraphs. You have headings where you have headings. Like, it's structured wonderfully. You can look at it and you can almost understand a lot of the page just by the format of it. Like, it's beautiful. But let's talk about what we're selling here. He's like, what do you mean, Nick? Well, it's obvious we're selling insurance. Like, where do you think you work? Well, there's not a product called insurance. There's a category called insurance, right? We don't sell insurance. We sell car insurance. We sell home insurance. We sell renter's insurance. So when we're talking about, you better have the right coverage for insurance if you get into an accident, I don't know what that means. You better have the right, we can say coverage because we're going to say car insurance coverage when you get into an auto accident. Now I have the context. I know what type of accident it is. I know what type of insurance I need. And so for him, it was super easy. We went through the page and we played the what kind game. What kind of insurance? What kind of accident? Right? You just add qualifiers. And now your page is magically about something because you have a page on a website in this enormous internet, right? There's a thing called the enormous internet. If you don't give your page and your website context, it's never going to be found on the web. So we need to use the right words in the right places to do that.
Right. So then that's a helpful way to look at it, because on the surface, like, yes, this is a great piece of content. It makes sense. I read it. I understand it. It's all here, but it's going to get lost in the void because we weren't specific enough with, you can call them long tail keywords if you want, but giving that context is what you're doing. That's the whole point of the keywords. As long as you're not spamming it, it's actually helping the person, the reader, and the Google crawling bots to figure out what it's about. So what about your thoughts on things like Lighthouse. It's built into Chrome. People can use it to run a scan. Do you really put any stock in the results from that, aside from maybe it catching glaring technical issues?
If the page is awful slow, we want to take a look at it. And here's a couple things for consideration. One, about 30 to 40% of those sites online are WordPress. The benefit of WordPress is it can do all these things. The negative of WordPress is it can do all these things, and it has JavaScript coming over here and CSS coming over here, right? And all the plugins. And so what you don't want to do is, and it would be very difficult to do it, is start to strip out a bunch of files and take away the benefit of WordPress. I was just talking to a client yesterday that said, it's in WordPress. We can't even publish a page with the help of dev. Okay. Well, that they sort of went to the extreme, right? Because WordPress should be easy for users. But if it's just like, if you take a look at a web page on mobile and it's just white blank, how it shows up in Lighthouse, right? We should probably do something about that. The other thing is performance, page speed specifically, is one of 200 signals-ish, or whatever the magic number is today from Google. What they don't really talk about is, in the broader context of performance, is how are my website performance numbers, page speed numbers, how are they in comparison to my competitors? Because we're vying for the top 5 spots, let's just say. So if my site is slower than Amazon, I don't care. I don't care. I'm not competing with Amazon, right? But if my site is slower than the nearest competitor by by double digits, I may want to care about that. It's something I may want to look into.
Yeah, that makes sense. Speaking of WordPress, do you have a preferred WordPress SEO plugin to help with keeping track of your title tags and everything?
I use Yoast because it's a wonderful updating tool, right? I don't use it for the colors. I just had a client a couple of weeks ago. They came off of Phosis, which is a CMS that, yeah, right. Yeah, me too. That is going away. It's losing support. And they're like, well, what about the colors? I was like, don't worry about the colors. Just don't worry about them. But they're yellow. Sometimes they're red. I'm like, well, just really don't worry about them. They're not relevant.
For the people who haven't used Yoast, the colors, he means it's like a stoplight. It scans and says, hey, I think you're doing a good job, you get green. If I think you are doing a bad job, you get red.
Yeah. So you can put in, if we had a page about car insurance, you can put in car insurance 500 times. And then in your keyword section in Yoast, put in car insurance, and it's going to go green.
They say green. Yay.
Yeah. Right. So let's understand how to write a good page. And then if those tools can help us, great. But personally, I never used them.
Got it. Well, good to know. Well, I appreciate you joining me today, Nick. I think it's great talking through the details of what matters when it comes to SEO. And I know if you're listening to this and you're not a technical person, some of this might have gone over your head, which is okay. Send this to the technical person on your team. Have them listen to it, especially if it's your webmaster or whatever. And now maybe you've got some questions to ask if you're interviewing someone who's going to do SEO on your site, or maybe you haven't been happy with your SEO team. Now you can go back with some of this stuff and kind of push them a little bit on it, especially when it comes to, the technical side of things. Don't let them give you wishy-washy answers, because this matters, all right? This is the future of your business and you getting found on the internet, and everything's moving that direction. So take this seriously. Don't let it just slip by and ignore it. And if you guys aren't sure where you stand, I do recommend getting an audit done to find some opportunities for improvement. There's always stuff there that can be improved. If you guys want to get in touch with Nick, his info will be in the show notes. And I do have one last question for you, Nick, before we close out here. Do you have a favorite SEO research tool? I know you've mentioned a couple, but what's your favorite go-to?
My favorite SEO research tool. My favorite research tool is Screaming Frog.
Screaming Frog. All right.
If we want to include that as a research tool. Yeah. I open that thing up every day.
Nice. Well, and there's so many out there, so it's just like, it can be overwhelming to know where to start, but that's really awesome. Thanks again for being here, Nick. Thanks to all of you guys for listening. If you thought this was valuable, please leave a review for the show on Apple or Spotify. After that, get out there and work on your SEO. Take care, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in to the Digital Dominance Podcast. This show is brought to you by FroBro.com. If you are a B2B service provider and you're ready to transform your website into a high-converting, lead-generating sales tool, go to FroBro.com/revive to learn more.